let's talk about Guma and Trans-Africa Capital that have now set out to invest in the Lions rugby team, or the Lions Rugby Union. Why a foray into rugby? I mean, you do business in ICT and all sorts of other things. Why rugby?
Because I think sports in particular is very dear to my heart, and so is it with Ivo. And one of the things, Lerato, that we needed to do was to break the barriers.
Okay.
One thing that I always tell people is to say that it's only through sports that united us after 1994. In 1995, South Africa was faced with an opportunity when we hosted the Rugby World Cup, when Madiba walked onto the field to support the Springboks, who became triumphant on that day.
Right.
Little did people who were inside the stadium know that there were multitudes of our people outside who were largely black, who were celebrating the victory. And that was the beginning of the formation of a true rainbow nation.
Okay, let's just stay on this very sensitive racial tack, because many people say profitable sport is football in this country, exclusive sport, white sport, is rugby, and just given its exclusivity, chances are you're not going to make as much money as you were if you were buying a football club, for instance.
I beg to differ, because I come from football. I've lost millions in football. But I think the difference in rugby obviously has been this disparity that more money has been plowed into rugby than in football, you know, and you have an enlightened support base in terms of corporate sponsors who buy suites, and rugby teams own their own stadia, unlike with soccer teams that depends on municipal owned facilities. But I think what is very important is that in soccer, now that you've mentioned soccer, many people are not aware that today in South Africa, 9 of the top 16 teams playing in the PSL Soccer League are owned by whites. And there's this myth that soccer is a black man's sport. Yes, majority of the players are black, but the ownership is skewed towards white. But you can't say that about rugby. Rugby has always been a domain of fellow white South Africans. It has never been done. Today, we've done a historic deal that transforms rugby.
So again, breaking barriers, racial barriers at an ownership level. You pledged to transform the sport by introducing a new model for the future of SA rugby. What does a new model for rugby mean?
I think the most important is this paradigm shift of saying that you need transformation to be led from a boardroom. Many people are saying we've done a BE deal. A typical BE deal, Lerato, you know, is where you get invited by a white firm, it vendor finances you. In this instance, we're writing our hard-earned money to invest in a team that in the recent past has not been doing very well. Right. So we've backed a team that is not at its best, with a view that with our investment, we're going to turn the corner and make it a Manchester United in rugby.
I'm glad you've said that, because Manchester United, I can't believe I'm saying this, is indisputably the biggest football brand. Okay, I said it, but we'll leave it at that. Now, you want to do that with the Lions Union. How are you going to do that? It's taken years to build up Man U.
Yes, we don't have years to do this. Because I think the difference is our success has to be focused on making sure that the majority of our people in this country do embrace rugby. And we want to make sure that as they convert supporting soccer to rugby, their first point of call is going to be the Lions, because we're going to make the Lions a cool team, a cool team to support, a cool team where you know as a young black African child or a young white African child, you will know that there's only one team that can nurture your talent for you to become a Springbok player.
Now, you could do everything that you can to give support to the players, technical input into the team, branding and marketing. You've also got to operate within a regulatory environment, for lack of a better environment, or lack of a better word, that is governed by the Rugby Union of South Africa and laws of South Africa and issues around transformation and quotas and all sorts of other things that are just bigger than what the Lions Rugby Union is?
Lerato, those are the challenges that we face as a country that is really moving from our dark past. But I think in sports we've made huge strides. Hence I've made reference to soccer. And I believe that what we've done today is really taking rugby barriers right on the floor. And we hope and believe that I will not be the first black person to buy into a rugby team. There's many more other black people who are going to venture into this because we believe it's the right thing to do. You have mentioned the issue around transformation, which is fundamental. Yeah. You know, transformation also only at board level and not being seen on the rugby field, it will mean we'll have failed. But one thing that I know is that there's so many black kids that are talented that just needs an opportunity where they can really show their talent.
Okay, let's bring Nyagaka into this conversation. Yes, Nyagaka, I know you're an investment banker. He always reminds me. And I know you're from Kenya and the United States, and you watch baseball and basketball and all sorts of other things like that. But does this excite you?
You know, it does. You know, and it's good to see the foray being made into a field like rugby, as Mr. Gumede has said, which has you know, traditionally been fairly homogeneous. The one thing I will say, which is interesting, is it's not just about the revenue model in terms of thinking about this being a potential success, but it's also about how you capitalize a business. So, for example, writing an equity check is a great way to actually start up an enterprise as opposed to levering a lot of debt onto a particular team. It's the difference between, for example, Chelsea or Man U versus Liverpool.
Okay, let's talk about going forward. You mentioned the fact that a lot of kids would love to play for a rugby team but don't have the opportunity. You've got to worry about profitability for what you've also acknowledged is a rugby team that is a bit challenged or in a little bit of distress at the moment. And so right now it's about identifying the best talent, putting it out there, start getting those points, playing as many rugby tournaments as possible and build the brand. At what point are you going to be going into these townships and identifying those young boys who want to play rugby, but because they went to a school that doesn't have a rugby tradition, hasn't had that kind of nurturing and investment, can't be part of the Lions, can't be part of your vision?
Certainly, I think you've hit the nail on the coffin. I think that for me, what is very crucial is to hold hands with government, because you know sports cannot succeed if it's not strong at school level. What made soccer to succeed was to be able to produce the Dr. Kumalos is because we had a very strong school sports. And that is something that as South Africa, we took our eye off the ball. And that is why it's so difficult that the only players, rugby players that comes to the fore are those that go to what we used to call Model C schools. And until and unless we really go to the township schools in Alexandra, we go to Soweto and all the other outlying areas, we're not going to achieve that. But we have programs in Lions, and both myself and my partner, Ivor Chikovic, with whom I've invested in this business, we are not in it for money. We are going to make money for a club, but we want to reinvest the money into growing this club so that we can create those opportunities and bring the winning culture. We are lucky, Rato, in that the Lions of today is full of youngsters. Yeah. We've got black players that are playing for the team. We've got a gem that has been unearthed by the Lions coaching team, which is Alton Janjis. He's an amazing young fly half, and he's doing fantastic. We want to make sure that we can harness that talent and make it a talent that can represent South Africa. And there's many players that we're hoping to bring to the fold, because you've got to understand, we are not only competing domestically in the Currie Cup, ABSA Currie Cup, we have also the Super 15, where we have to play against the top teams from New Zealand and top teams from Australia. And that is what we're looking to do, to make sure that we can be competitive.